Hello, friends and family. Here I am again, Sister Martina from the Abbey of St. Walburga in Bavaria, Germany. Forgive me my English. This is the second meeting of our series about freedom and faith, based on some values of the monastic life that we can also live in our Christian life in the world. The subject that I chose for today is something that's generally very badly understood, but it's something simply essential for our Christian life. Our life as Christians and also our life as Jews and Muslims, we all believe in the same God, and we all believe that God is not something, some idea, or some kind of energy, but a person. If God is a person, then it is possible to meet him. It is possible to have with God a personal relationship. God himself, of course, chooses this person relationship with us. He looks for us, he searches us, and he not only created us, but he gives us constantly his grace and his love, and he became man, and he taught us and suffered for us until the blood, until death on the cross, as an invitation to this meeting with him. We are free, however, and we can spend our whole lives simply rejecting this invitation from God. We can spend our whole lives trying to get away from God, saying no to him. This is something that we must do. And this search for God is the theme that I chose for today. Actually, something that the first monks in Egypt and Palestine of the 3rd and 4th century called fuga mundi. The obvious translation would be flee from the world. But what kind of flee is that, and what kind of world is that the monks left behind them? And what sense does it make? Why did they do it? How did they do it? We could think perhaps on two people who love each other with a deep and true love. These people look or try to get together, to be together, to meet each other. And so that this meeting is really authentic, they need some kind of, how do you say it in English, some kind of tranquility, some kind of peaceful moment. We cannot meet a loved person in the middle of noise and turbulence. They also need time. We cannot be with a loved person when we have no time, when we have pressures around us. And they also need, of course, some kind of solitude, some kind of privacy, of intimacy, of being with each other. And we can apply these things also to our spiritual life. In order to meet God, we do need also this peaceful moment. We also need to be alone with him. We also need to have time with him. This is what the monks and Saint Benedict in his rule call searching for God. This is the fuga mundi. This is what the monks did. They left the world behind them, even if this world had very good things, to look for God in peace, in silence, in solitude. And Saint Benedict says this is the only good reason for someone to enter monastic life. Of course, we could here say many critics about it. Is really only possible to meet God in the monastery, or is this going into a monastery not a kind of fleeing away from our lives, from the responsibility of lives? Is not a kind of being indifferent to people and to society. We in contemplative monasteries, we laugh very much sometimes at people who come to visit us and say, "Oh, but you're normal people. I never thought that the sisters could be so funny and intelligent and free." And we laugh much about that. Of course, there is the danger in a monastery, as Pope Francis says all the time, of still having here values that are not spiritual values at all. We can also be envious and jealous and have a love for riches and so on. We must be careful about these things. But on the other hand, This fuga mundi, this looking for time and good time with God, is something that every person needs. The monastic life is only one kind of vocation, and we must try. When someone comes and says he wants to enter a monastery, we generally say, go back to your life, go back to your work, studies, boyfriend, family, etc., and let time show you if this is really your vocation. On the other hand, a person should also have love for his family, for his friends, unless monastic life is not actually a healthy choice for this person. But we in the world need also to put time aside for this meeting with God. And it's very interesting to observe that people who live in the world and who criticize this monastic vocation are sometimes exactly the people, and I'm talking also about myself, that try to escape from the realities of life. So many times in our world of today, we do everything possible, every kind of distraction, every kind of busy activities in order not to think about suffering, about sickness, about death, even worse, about really deep problems of life, about our own lives, or about the suffering that we see, for example, in other people. So many times is this life in the world a life of escapism, of fleeing from the realities of life. And this is exactly what the monks try to do. They try to set time and solitude in order to face better the reality of life. We have also in the world of today enormous fear, this is natural, of meeting ourselves, and facing God. If God is light, then of course in this light we can see much better our own imperfections and faults and sins. When we are in darkness, we don't see these things, but at the moment in which we are in light and we see ourselves in light, then we notice, how many things do I do wrong, or have I done wrong, or how many things could I make better? And this gives us some kind of fear, of course. But if we don't take this step, if we don't have the courage to really face things as they are, then we can never grow into a mature personality. We live always escaping, trying not to see what the reality is. Of course, we can also have the attitude of facing things in an honest way, but without God. Many people do this. I have a bad sickness, for example, and I do face it. I don't try to escape it, but without God. There's no mention of God here. And generally the result of this is, of course, a feeling of despair. I mean, what is the sense of it? What is the end of it? What do I suffer? Why do I have this sickness? Why do I have to die? If there is no God, if there is no love, if there is no eternal life, well, okay, I'm very honest, but nothing comes out of it. And that's why perhaps Pope John Paul II insisted so many times that only in God we can understand the full sense of life, of ourselves, of others. This famous sentence, famous words of the Pope, man can only get to know himself in God. Only God reveals man to himself. So this meeting with God, this searching for God, this time and solitude and courage that we must have to face ourselves in God, to face the others, to face the world in God, is something totally fundamental, essential for our lives, for our spiritual lives, and also for the whole of our lives. This does not mean escapism, this does not mean selfishness, this does not mean isolation. On the contrary, this means really seeing and being open to reality. In order to have this meeting with God, so to say, this encounter with God, we don't need special, for example, methods of concentration. We don't need weird and strange things. Let's think of the story of the prodigal son, I think you say in English, the parable. I mean, we only need to do what this boy did. He repented, he was hungry, and he decided to go back to his father. And he went back. If he ran or not, we don't know. Each one of us has a way to do it. We only need love. We only need to want really and to do it, to go back to God, to open ourselves to God. And what is the reaction? We think God, the Father in the story, would then correct us, would scold us, would tell us on our faces everything that we have done wrong. We would ask from us that we account for every penny of his money. No, what the Father does in the story, what God does to us, is that he opens his arms, he comes to us in his mercy, in his love. He gives us a new ring, he gives us a feast. That's what we believe. Exactly, God is love. So there's no fear. So when we meet God, on the contrary, we only find peace, love, and mercy. But we have to make the effort. We have to look for him, as the prodigal son did, or he would be there waiting. He gives us our freedom. He doesn't force us to go to him. He's there, but he doesn't force us to go to him. It doesn't matter where we do that. It doesn't matter how we do that, if it's in a monastery or not. It does not matter at all. What matters is that we do that we somehow in our lives constantly, and for us nuns it's the same thing, every day again, we have the courage and the joy to get away from the mere worldly things, distractions, noise, things that are actually perhaps not even bad, but they are just distractions. They are just superficial. Things that have much more to do with my pride, my selfishness, my wish to have power and to appear good, to get away from these things and to open myself in humility, in love, to this loving and wonderful Father that wants to meet me, that comes to me with his open arms. The great mystics, the great saints who had this intimacy with God and who were people of great common sense and great realism, they always say it's only in love, or in God, we could also say God is love. It's only in love that we really understand the deeper reality of the world, of life, of death, of our own path, of our own vocation, of the life of others. It's only in love that we really live as full, grown-up personalities, human beings. We are in this year of St. Joseph here at my side. Pope Francis has declared this holy year in December with a wonderful document. We should all read it. And St. Joseph, what better example can we have of this fuga mundi? He was a worker, a man that knew poverty, that surely knew the difficult situation, political situation of his people, of his time. A man of deep realism. I mean, he was not someone trying to escape from life, much on the contrary, but also the man of silence, the man that knew in the middle of his very busy and surely difficult and hard life, that knew how to open himself to God, to God's will, to God's words. And that's why he found his vocation, and that's why he is so important in the history of our salvation. Let's ask St. Joseph to bless us. Let's ask St. Joseph to help us follow his example in our own way, in our own circumstances, to be at the same time people of deep, deep love for the world, love for the people, love for our societies, but this love through God, in God, also persons of deep capacity for contemplation, for prayer, for silence, and for this wonderful meeting with the Lord. Thank you so much. God bless us all, and until our next meeting. God bless us.